Mike, well, just, there's 2 hands up already. I'm wondering if it's. Well, let's get started.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, July 25th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us tonight in the pledge?
Sure.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Rocket. All right, we're going to close this portion of the select board meeting and reopen as the local liquor control board. We do have an item before us tonight. That's to consider the approval of a first and third class and outside consumption liquor license for Vermont Spirits Distilling Company at 5573 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont. And we do have someone here from Vermont Spirits Distilling. So if you want to introduce yourself, and then just you can tell us a little bit about you know what you're going to do with the permits, things like that.
Absolutely. My name's Don Culp. I'm one of the distillers. I have been working with Vermont Spirits. It'll be 3 years in October. We have been doing tastings at the distillery for since we opened, allowing people to taste what we do and understand what we do. We are Vermont's oldest distillery, and we felt like it was time to offer something a little bit more to the community, as well as to our business, give another aspect of it. So we would like to start doing cocktails. What that might look like to begin with is maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at least to start, and then we'll do cocktails in the meeting room, meeting house, which is where our tasting room is, and having people be allowed to sit out on the patio that we built. One of the stipulations that we knew that we were up against was having a bathroom.
Mhm.
So the first set of photos that I put on here is showing the front door. It shows the entrance in, so top left is the front door, top right is the view as soon as you enter the meeting house or the tasting room. And then we'll go all the way back. You'll see the display on the top right-hand side of that photo. That is more blown up on the lower left-hand side. And that's where we'll put a new door to have access to a bathroom. And that shows the back side of the bathroom. So where that trash can and the shelf is where the new door will be.
Yep.
And so we will have access for a bathroom for our guests. And then the backside shows that we have the other view from our front door on the top left is shows access that we have a ramp going up to the front door for handicap accessibility, getting onto the ramp and getting onto the deck. And both of the lower photos show the egress from the front and back side. Of course, we'll have furniture out there. We'll have some coverage from the sun. And that's what we're looking at.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Not all. Take a motion. Mary?
Thank you. I move that the select board approve a first and third class and outside consumption liquor license for Vermont Spirits Distilling Company at 5573 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont 05001.
I have a second. I have a second. Okay, well, second. Any discussion? And Dan and Kim, I believe, are going to recuse themselves from the vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Looks great.
Great, thanks.
All right. So we're going to end that portion of the local liquor control board. And we're going to reopen as the select board. We don't have any cannabis control board items before us. Order of agenda. Everybody good with it?
Question. I thought we were gonna put cemeteries on this.
Cemeteries is, so our last item, timeline for open board items. It's an opportunity for us to discuss, what our priorities are going over, in the next few months till next election. So cemeteries would be one of those we can put on there as a discussion topic, the charter, things like that. We'd like to try and identify some of these issues that we need to address, and then start thinking about a timeline in which it's feasible to go forward and address them. So that's when we would talk about cemeteries. All right, so we'll go to public comment. We'll start with people in the room, and then we'll go to those who are joining us by Zoom. If you do have a public comment, please come up to the microphone, identify yourself and your town, village of residence. You have 5 minutes. Please address the select board as a whole and no personal attacks. Do we have any public comments starting in the room? Okay, go ahead.
That's printing issues. So I had to do the laptop.
Okay.
So my name is Aaron Warner, and I live in Hartford. I have spoken to before. I own 2 businesses, and I'm a member of leadership Upper Valley class of 2012. Pertinent to my 5-minute speech tonight are my 3 years as a program specialist in a rehabilitation house for 5 highly functioning but developmentally disabled pedophiles. I also work as a liaison to a safe house for human trafficking victims in my home state of Oregon. I'm here today as a public service announcement regarding something most of you might not be aware of, which is the recent rise in the sexual grooming and trafficking of children. It is a topic most people in polite society would prefer to remain ignorant about, which is why it's become the fastest growing illegal activity in the world. Currently, human trafficking brings in an estimated $150 billion annually. To put that in perspective, that's more than either the illegal arms trade and illegal drug trafficking trade. $150 billion is more than the GDP of Ukraine and double the GDP of Serbia. As one child advocate put it, you can sell a bag of cocaine one time, or you can sell a child 5 to 7 times a day for many years. The term groomer has exploded in its use in recent years, at one point becoming the top trending term on Twitter. And sorry, I just lost my place. The concern about child sexual grooming of late has led to the formation of such advocacy groups as Gays Against Groomers. In recent years, there's been much talk in our town and country about the United States legacy with slavery. Slavery is no longer illegal in the United States, thank God. However, human trafficking, which is modern day slavery, has more slaves than at any time in human history, including when slavery was legal. My hope is that instead of attempting to adjudicate slavery from the past, you would put your energy into eradicating modern day slavery, especially the kind that involves the sexual exploitation of children. The exploitation of children often begins with the process called grooming. Most people don't know what sexual grooming of minors consists of, so I've taken the liberty of printing out the most up-to-date research, which has resulted in the first ever scientific model known as the sexual grooming model. You have copies of it in front of you. This model is not exclusive to children, however, they are the most vulnerable, and here are some things to look for. Stage 1 is victim selection. The minor lacks confidence, has low self-esteem, is lonely or isolated, troubled, needy, usually compliant and trusting of adults. Stage 2 includes gaining access and isolation. This is where groomers involve themselves in youth organizations such as school, youth group, scouts, sports. They manipulate family to gain access to minors. They engage in activities alone, take minors for overnight stays, things of that development. Trust development is stage 3. They appear charming, nice, likable. They have insider status, good reputations. They're pillars of the community. And stage 4, as you can see, gets into sexual content, asks questions about minor sexual experiences, talks about sexual things they themselves have done, used inappropriate sexual language, teach minor sexual education, use of accidental touching, watching minors, etc. And then in the stage 5, there's the post-abuse maintenance behavior. So one thing I wanted to add to this, to give you some idea of how close to home this is starting to get, how bold these traffickers are getting, is I have a client who is a Dartmouth grad. She had a friend in Texas and a friend in the Carolinas within the same month. One was in a parking lot at a grocery store. Some men pulled up in a van and ripped her child out of her hands. And luckily there were enough people in the parking lot that they surrounded the van. She got her child back. Another person took 2 of her children and let them go into the bathroom. Only one of them came out. She asked where her sister was. She said, I don't know. So she went inside, looked in the stall and saw a pair of feet pointing the wrong way. Opened up the stall. There was a person shaving her daughter's head. So this is how aggressive they're getting. This is how bold they're getting. This is how serious it is. And I just want you guys to be aware, because children of this town are an invaluable resource. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, will be opening hands up on Zoom. Okay.
First is Marcy. Go ahead, Marcy Bartlett.
Yes, hi, thank you. This is Marcy Bartlett from Wilder. And I wanted to make mention, if it hasn't been made, that our Officer Ebbeckhausen on our Hartford Police Force is a cousin to the Officer Ebbeckhausen in Rutland, who died in the line of duty a few weeks back. And I wondered if we might observe a moment of silence to honor that family.
That's fine with me. Why don't we do it right now? Okay. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you
Anything
very
else?
much.
Yes, of course.
Ready for next one?
Yes.
Doreen, go ahead. You should be able to unmute. Doreen?
I didn't want to speak. I don't know why you're asking me.
Oh, I'm seeing your hand is raised on the Zoom.
Oh, I thought I lowered it. Mine says lower. Lower
Oh.
hand. Oh, all
Oh,
right.
there you
Thank you.
go.
Sorry, I pushed the button wrong. Sorry,
Oh, don't
guys.
worry about it.
Okay.
Thanks,
But while I got you, I would like to, I guess, thank you for having the speed things on Summer Street. That's really nice that people are slowing down a little bit more.
Yeah, that's good. I drove through that today. Yeah, it's nice. They've done a good job to slow everybody down. So thanks, Doreen.
All right. Next is Marie. Ooh. Marie, there you go.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Kim, Marie, Alvin, White River. I
Marie.
just found out the other day that the construction vehicles for the new building going up at Twin Pines, that they are going to be parking in the Wilder parking ride. And I didn't know if you were aware of that or who gives them permission to do that. That's sort of against what the actual ordinance even says, that commercial vehicles can't use that for a parking lot. So I didn't know if any of you knew about that or have any comments on that, or.
That's the first I've heard of it. I don't know if anyone else has heard of it. It's something Gail, our town manager's out this week, but I'm sure she'd be able to tell us more about that. We'll certainly, see what we can find out about it.
Do you know anything?
Do you have any opinion of that at all, or?
I don't know. I think I'd have to see if it's actually happening. Have you seen it, or did you just hear that?
I heard it from Twin Pines at the meeting they had the other night at St. Paul's.
Yeah, I don't.
So I hadn't heard that. I'm happy to look into it. I know sometimes the state requests to park vehicles, or their companies that are doing construction for them in our lot. And if it is if it's a burden, or if it's gonna take up too much space for residents or safety of traffic, we do not let them do that. So I am happy to look into that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Mary. Lanny?
We control that lot, correct, Paula?
It is my understanding, when I had to research it for the RV, that we do manage that lot, but we do not own that lot.
So
So
somebody would have to approach us to ask for permission to do such a thing as staging?
I believe so.
Okay, all right, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes. Heidi You can go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, Heidi Duta, White River Junction, Vermont.
Hi Heidi.
Hi. I'd like to address a few different things tonight. I came down on the day that they were preparing our tax bills. And I spoke with Lana, so I do know that there was a miscommunication with putting out the notice for the last select board meeting, and I've refrained from complaining too much about warning the meeting, but this is the last time I'm going to actually go forward with that without putting in a formal complaint, because I think that warning the meetings for the town residents to be able to attend meetings is very important. It is a violation of open meeting laws that it is not warned in a timely manner. As you all know, that I'm usually at the meetings. Tonight has been an anomaly that I'm not in the meeting hall. I refrain from coming down there because I think that I would say too much and get too angry. I'm trying to refrain. I have sent many, many emails to different employees of the town, different committees since July 17th, and I have had absolutely no reply from anyone. I know a few people have been out of the office due to flood issues or vacations. Communication in this town is very poor. It's very lacking. And I have a problem with that. We do not need an officer or an employee to have communications with the residents. It's everyone's duty to check emails on a daily basis or an every other day basis. And just a simple email of, I will get back to you, or I will look into that, goes far in this town. And all I'm asking for is someone to reply. I don't think that's asking too much. I don't think that's going above and beyond your duties. I'm not saying it's the select board that's wrong in this aspect. I'm just saying overall. But as far as warning a meeting, it's all of your duties to acknowledge that it should be posted in a timely manner. It should be warned in different places. It's not just Lana's job, or it's not just Gail or Paula's duty. It's everybody that's sitting as a select board member. As far as what's happening in this town, there are a lot of issues that are not being addressed. Our charter and our ordinances are not being followed. They're not being endorsed and enforced. And that is a major issue in our town. I know it's not just your problem. It's every person that's employed or an acting sitting member in our town. And this is something that really needs to be addressed, because we, as an all, resident, employee, board member, commission, committee, are failing. We're failing, all of us. And this is what I needed to say tonight. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Heidi. As for the meeting last week, that was an emergency meeting dealing with the significant issue of public concern and life safety involving a dam by Simon Pearce that was damaged. The state law allows us to hold emergency meetings. It was warned appropriately, and it was something we needed to do at the time, so there was no violation of open meeting law. Thank you. Any other Zoom comments?
Heidi's put her hand back up.
Is there anyone else? We've already heard from Heidi. All right, we'll let Heidi back, but just for a couple minutes, Heidi, quick point, please.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
I'm talking about the regular meeting, Mike. I'm not talking about an emergency meeting.
What was the regular meeting you're discussing?
The regular town meeting.
We always warn our regular town meetings. Last Tuesday, we had an emergency meeting. That was about the Simon Pearce Dam. I can't remember any time we've had a regularly scheduled meeting that we've never warned. We did have a meeting for training, but those don't need to be warned.
Last week was your training. The week before was your regular meeting. It was not even posted until Monday. Monday is not sufficient warning for a meeting. I know for a fact.
Thank you, Heidi. We're gonna have Paula address that.
Heidi, I think you may be referencing the meeting where we had to set the tax rate and we had to wait for numbers from the state to come in. So we were unaware as to when that meeting would actually be held. So we did follow, it did qualify as an emergency meeting, and we followed protocols, but that was a necessity.
Thank you, Paula. All right, we're gonna move on. Any other hands up on Zoom?
That's not true.
Thank you, Heidi, for your comment. We're gonna move on to select board comments and announcements. Lanny, you want to kick us off? You got anything?
I don't have anything.
Rocket?
Yeah, I was it Marcy touched on it. I just wanted to acknowledge the Ebbinghaus family and then all of our first responders generally. I think we take it for granted how difficult their work is and how dangerous it is sometimes, and just want to make sure we acknowledge that. The other thing is I've been thinking about the flooding and environmental resiliency, and I know we're going to have Dana talk to us soon, right? And or is it just the update? In any case, the update. So what I've been thinking about, I wonder in our own town at our level, like I think there's a lot of really great reasons for us to be environmentally sustainable and move off of fossil fuels. I don't know that we should consider carbon footprint as one of those considerations because I don't think that's going to really move the needle in global climate change. I mean, I think like being a leader in that and being sustainable and being self-sufficient, those are great reasons. So I'm very supportive of it, but I'm also thinking like, what things should we start thinking about in the medium and long term about how we actually really build resiliency in our community? And what does that mean? I think we're really lucky. I mean, obviously Simon Pearce is really affected, but I think overall compared to other communities across Vermont, we were really lucky in terms of the minimal amount of damage that we received in that flood. But I do think that it could just as easily be our town next time. These don't seem like they're 100-year floods anymore. They seem like maybe they're 10-year floods. And maybe it's not just that, but other things. So in terms of just how we protect our citizens and what we do in terms of infrastructure, I don't have any answers about that, but I thought that we should at least begin that long form conversation. As always, it is an honor to serve this town. Thank you very much.
Mary?
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the town staff who have continued to do so much work to help the public and our town in particular with the flooding problems. I also wanted to remind people, I took a class with Attorney General Charity Clark, and she's been on Vermont Public twice to talk about disaster-related scams, fake charity scams, FEMA imposter scams, and utility disconnection scams. And if you go to her office, she can direct you towards, things to look out for and things to be wary of. She also discussed when you are giving a recommendation on hiring a home improvement contractor, what you should do if you encounter price gouging. So again, you can contact her office for that and people will direct you to that. So I think we have to be careful. There's a lot of people out there who actually truly are helping, but there are other people who are making use of these emergencies to not be so helpful. Thank you.
That's good, Dan.
The tree board on Saturday is going to be pulling poison ivy. So if that's up your alley, we'll be here on the riverbank.
Thanks,
Throwing
Dan.
that out there.
What is that, Dave?
Saturday.
Yeah, I don't have anything, but I would like to echo what Rocket was talking about, that in terms of climate resiliency, us doing what we can to reduce our carbon footprint is important, but it is not going to solve the global issue. But in our climate action plan, there really are a number of recommendations and actions that we can take specifically to be more adaptable and more resilient. And I think it would be good for us to even have like a session where we just spend looking at some of those actions.
Great, thanks, Kim.
Mr. Chair, I forgot one quick thing.
Okay.
It's a WRJ Pride Week. And so there's a ton of events that are happening. And I think the best way the public can find it is mainstreetmuseum.org. A lot of fun things. I guess it started this past Saturday and extends through this upcoming weekend. So I just want to put that on people's radar.
Okay, thanks, Rocket. I don't have any comments or announcements. We have no appointments tonight. Paul, are you going to give us an update, or do you, I know Gail has everyone read the significant activity report? Is there?
Just two items I wanted to just two items I wanted to share. One is FEMA remains with the tent. They're going to do that through tomorrow, so they'll be there Wednesday as well. They've been great. And something else occurred today at the transfer station. There was a hazardous waste collection this past weekend, and there was a container that was identified that I believe had been at the transfer station. Clean Harbor, who manages our collection, took a look at it. It was marked hazardous. There were quite a few agencies. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Nobody was hurt. It was inert. Everything's good. But there was quite a bit of activity. Our fire department, of course, hazmat, bomb squad, National Guard, others on site. And as I said, it was a radioactive inert substance that's used to calibrate equipment. Scott Cooney shared that everybody was calling it CZ135, but when I tried to Google that to sound like I actually knew that that was what it was, nothing really came up, but I think the information you have is sufficient. It was removed by the Vermont Department of Health. No danger, as I said to the public.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Paula, or questions in general, and Gail follow up on? Okay. All right, well, we'll move to board reports, motions, and ordinances. So our first item is the Class 2 highway grants. I think we have Brian here from Public Works, and he'll tell us about that.
Good evening. So earlier when Chris was here, we were talking about, this is the grant that we weren't sure at the time we were going to get, but we got. So we've got $200,000. This is to help with the paving for Christian Street. So this has to be identified with the street work that we're doing for paving now. So this is going to help with that. Then with the other monies that we put in for the budget, if we have additional monies left over, this will help us potentially next year, maybe take a look at doing on Quechee, Heartland Quechee Main Street from there. But right now we're in a process. We've had to shift gears with the storm. Obviously, we weren't able to get all of the paving done sooner. So now we're just picking that back up again. So I can't tell you now how far where we're at with tonnage and how far we'll be able to go next year. But this is just the approval for the grant for us to accept the $200,000, and we do have a $50,000 local match, which we're meeting with what we budgeted for.
Questions for Brian? Mary?
Yeah, I had a quick question, and maybe I just misread this. I think it was on page 3 of the 22. It said, in one part, it said 25% matching, and the other said 20%. So I got confused.
For the two different grants.
Oh, okay.
That's 20%.
So this one's 25% match, right? To get 200,000.
The $200,000 one is at 20% match. Did Chris put 25 now?
Well, there was that.
Well,
page-
what he's talking about, the other one with is a,
Is that the Better Roads grant that you're talking? This
right, Chris
second
could have
one?
put down the 25, he did put down for local match at 25%. It should be 20%.
Okay, that's what I was,
So it should be
that's
20%.
what I was thinking about. And then the Better Roads grant, did I misread it, or was it just written? And I know it's a letter to participate, but it said construction due September 30th, 23. Is that accurate? And I said, that's just around the corner.
Yeah, this grant is due for, let me take a look.
Well, there were 2 pages where it had the picture of the map, and one of them said,
Oh, you're looking at the map. That's work we're gonna be doing now this year, and then there's potentially work next year.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure, because I
Sure,
thought,
yep.
whoa, is that enough time?
Yep.
Okay.
And that one is also to a 20% match.
So I read that the grant will free up funds to begin improvements along Quechee Heartland Road, south of US Route 4. Is that something that's looking at happening this year or next year?
Probably next year.
Okay, so this isn't something that we have to spend the money for immediately then?
Well, we're doing a paving project now, and Chris has talked to the contractor, Blacktop, and regarding holding the pricing for next spring.
Okay, so I'm confused then. The money that we're gonna free up the Quechee Heartland Road, that was the money that we would have spent on Christian Street had we not
Gotten this
got the grant.
correct.
Okay, so that was allocated for paving for fiscal year 24? That
Yeah,
was
for this year,
for
yes.
fiscal year 24, okay, all right, that's fine. Oh, okay, just make a motion.
Yeah, if anyone else have any, okay, yeah, go ahead, Lane.
Make a motion that we execute grant number P02134, utilizing reserves and operating cash flow to provide short-term financing of the grant as applied, as directed.
I'll
It's
second the
submitted, it's submitted, I guess.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So our next item is the Town of Hartford Municipal Mitigation Grants in Aid. We still have Brian for that one, I believe. So Brian, you can take it away.
This is the other grant. This is an annual grant that we'll get from V-Trans. This is in May. You put in our letter of intent, and the legislature, they go through their budget process. They do initial allocation. They look to see how many towns apply statewide. And then after that, you'll get a revised allocation. It's usually higher because most towns don't apply every year. So we're eligible for this year for the $40,000 with the $10,000 match on that. And what we're looking to do is piggyback this. This is for the ditch and culvert work. So we're lining this up with the paving. Okay, so we're trying to piggyback these together as we pave. We're also doing the ditching and lining with that. So.
This again for Christian Street?
Yes, this is right now
Again
for Christian Street. If we can go on, you got some of Chandler for next year. So.
Okay.
Any other questions from Brian? I'll take a motion if not. Kim?
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board execute grant for direct, you to execute it?
Is there language for this?
Yeah, there is.
Where? I'm trying to find it.
Page 50.
There's so much between, yeah, I know, there's so much between them.
I move that the select board direct the director of public works to execute grant number GA0563, utilizing reserves and operating cash flow to provide short-term financing of that grant.
We have a second from Rocket. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
That brings us to our next item, which is an update on the Simon Pearce Dam. I believe we probably have some representatives here who'd like to speak. If you would, just come up to the microphone and identify yourself, and you can provide an update to us, and we may have a couple questions. We appreciate you coming by to speak with us.
Great. My name is Jay Benson. I'm the CEO of Simon Pearce, longtime Upper Valley person, and been at Simon Pearce for about 6 years.
Okay.
Also have, who might come up and speak, John Lobb, our Senior Vice President of Operations. I don't know, for us, also on top of it, Tim Shaw, the structural engineer that we have used at our facility.
Okay.
And, in general, the water keeps coming down. We're sort of pleased with things are, and we're pleased with where our overall cleanup efforts are. I think it took something like 28 days to even have power after Irene. So the fact that we're where we are, we're feeling really good. We opened the store last week, and we're on track to maybe be opening the restaurant by the weekend. That being said, the water keeps coming down. We can see that and we've had a number of people come by and look at it, and John will walk through those. I guess from our perspective, as we speak to you, we're looking for sort of 2 areas of support. Number one, we would love some increased signage by the town about how to get to Quechee Village. When we have running races, there's signs that route people around, but right now you have to turn down and head towards Quechee Bridge before there's any signage. And I think for the Quechee Club, for other businesses in Quechee Village, and for the tourism in the town, it would be really helpful if people knew when they got to that factory, they could turn.
Okay, yep.
The second thing is, I want to encourage, and we have two of them here, of listening to the experts about where the dam is. We feel that there's a lot of public speculation going on, and we'd like to stop the speculation and focus on facts and where it is. And
Yeah.
we have a lot of people that can provide those facts.
Great.
We're very comfortable with how things are evolving on this, and we want to continue in that. And we see a disconnect from when we have some meetings, including chief and other people like that at Simon Pearce, people leaving seemingly doing okay, but then hearing a lot of consternation. We want to figure out how we get people on the same page there.
Great.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, I think, to give an update just on the various people that have been looking at the dam and everything else.
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah.
My name is John Lobb. I run operations at Simon Pearce. I've been there for 10 years. I am principally responsible for all aspects of operations and maintenance, including the dam in Quechee. I happen to be a civil engineer. That doesn't mean I'm qualified to design dams, but it does mean that I have a little bit of background that does suit me for our responsibility in these matters. I'm the primary interface with engineers and regulators, whom I've been working with for the entire decade that I've been here, both to evaluate the integrity of the dam, but also our hydroturbine and our building. 2 months before this storm, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is the authority over our dam, came and did an inspection. They come every 2 to 4 years, depending on whether there's a pandemic. And the times that every time that I've met with them, they come and they essentially give the same response, which is very low hazard, old dam, concrete's getting old, continue to monitor it. And we'll see in a couple of years. We got that report that said we should continue doing what we're doing on last Monday morning. Okay. By the end of that day, of course, I was, up over my knee in water inside the building. Obviously, the dam has sustained some damage. I think that was the south side of the dam, far side across from Simon Pearce, is shorter than it was 2 weeks ago. I believe that I know how it failed. I don't know exactly why, but I know structurally how it could likely have happened. We've spoken with 4 engineers in the last 2 weeks, some who've been brought to us from the town, and some whom we've reached out to personally. Those engineers include FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, and Du Bois and King. It was a fairly informal thing, and we've received again some informal feedback from Tim Shaw. The feedback in every case has been, listen, the dam gets stronger as you go down, the concrete gets wider. We can tell that some concrete has fallen off the dam, has been broken off the dam. But the dam itself appears to be strong, but we won't really know until there's condition in the river that allows us to dewater the entire face of the dam. Jay mentioned the river keeps coming down. The reality is the river keeps ebbing and flowing. Friday, we received quite a bit of water. There's more water in it this morning than there was Thursday. But we continue to monitor it, and everybody whom we've spoken with has left comfortable that there's not an imminent life safety danger. And what we need to do is we need to wait for a low water condition, which we typically are experiencing right now. But we need to wait for a low water condition, dewater the dam, which we can do by opening up a spillway, to allow the water to flow past the dam in a different manner. And then we need to assess the face of the entire face of that dam. I'll just say I made reference to knowing or thinking I know how the dam failed. It's important to understand how the dam was constructed over 100 or approximately 100 years ago. The dam is concrete. The dam was poured in sections, separate pours, if you will. Those separate pours result in seams. Okay, and it almost looks like bricks, if you will, or blocks, right? You see horizontal seams, you see vertical seams, all throughout the 150-foot length of this dam when we do dewater it. We monitor those seams. We believe the concrete failed on the south side at one of those seams, and it's actually a little lower on the far south side than it is in the middle. There are different seams that kind of explain, how we think it got shorter in different sections. Those seams are called lift joints, and the structural engineers that I've spoken with have asked me what I know about the dam. I've showed them pictures going back 10 years to every time we dewatered the dam and had it inspected. I've shown them the lift joints in the pictures that I think are responsible for the concrete coming, help explain where the concrete broke off the top of the dam. And to a person, in every interaction, they've left saying, you seem to know what you're talking about, you're doing the right thing, continue to monitor it, let us know when the water comes down enough that you can dewater it, and we can get a better look at it. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission said, you're gonna need to fix it. And so we're all in agreement, right? We wanna fix it, but we can't, if we can't look at the face of the dam, it's going to be difficult to really evaluate what we're going to do. So our plan is to dewater the dam, maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks. It really does depend on Mother Nature. And it is harder because the dam is shorter. So this, you have to actually drain more water from the reservoir than you would otherwise. Dewater the dam, get a good look at it, meet with at least 2 engineers that could help give us estimates and ideas on a plan to repair the dam. More than likely, it's going to involve essentially pouring another dam on top of it to cover up and reface and resurface every piece of concrete on that dam. I'm speaking a little out of turn. I'm an engineer, but I'm not, an engineer that designs dams. But that is my gut. We are going to absolutely need coordination from the town of Hartford, from the state of Vermont, particularly the environmental folks, and from the federal regulators, and principally FERC. But since Army Corps was invited, they're certainly interested and curious. And so that's essentially where we are. I'll just say there's been mention in the paper of the dam leaning, perhaps showing some possible, sign of further failure. Let me just say in no uncertain terms, the dam is exactly in the same alignment that it's always been. The dam is not leaning forward. I really personally believe that there is no imminent risk of additional concrete breaking off the dam. But we need to, hope that the water keeps going down. We can get a good look at it, and then we can talk to the experts that can help us repair it. Then the question is, how soon can we get it repaired, right? What's involved? What permitting do we have to do? And are the necessary contractors available to do it? So in every conversation we've had with town employees who've come to visit us, I've left feeling like they're in the loop. They understand where we're at. They know what we know. And that's really my intention moving forward, is just to keep that line of communication open. Hopefully with this group, this can be a start of that. We'll just have to, decide how you guys, want to best be kept informed, either through your staff or.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and thanks very much. Very informative update. Anyone have any questions for you, Lanny?
Yes. So in order to, I don't know if you've been using the power generation, hydro, so
we
you.
cannot.
We
No,
cannot.
we're months and months away from being able to use.
I understand, but in the past you have.
Oh, yes,
Is the
absolutely.
intent to go back to use that again? So the water level has to be raised to what the dam was previously in order to run the hydro plant? Or,
No, I mean, you could run the hydro with a lower dam. You could potentially even run the hydro with no dam. But what the dam does is it gives you a higher elevation to the pond and a change in head,
right?
if you will. And it allows the dam to produce more energy. The dam also, of course, not just related to our hydro, but the dam, the pond behind it, and essentially the level of the river back through the golf course and so forth, of course, has become a part of that community that does go broader than Simon Pearce. Just to state the obvious, when we do dewater that dam, it's going to smell because the river channel is going to get much narrower. There's going to be a lot of mud, and frankly, people are going to wonder what's going on with the overall landscape that's been established over 100 years.
So your intent is to put the dam back in the same shape it was before, as far as the boundaries of the dam?
Certainly that would be our intent. I mean, again, the environmental regulators, have a stake in this, the state DEC, and our hope, since we have a certificate of public good for what we're doing with the hydro, and we generate lots of power that's used in the broader community. Our hope is that there's plenty of rationale for restoring the dam to what it was, but realistically, like I said, my gut tells me we'll probably have to put more concrete above the top and the sides, which may raise the overall elevation of the dam site.
Then the last question is there opportunity for federal funds to help you folks out with this?
I would love to know the answer to that question.
I live in Quechee, the only one here on the board that lives out there in Quechee, and that dam means a lot to me because I remember seeing it from a knee-high grasshopper. So
If I can, I've reached out to Peter Welch to start also seeing if there's any help that we can get from public support on all of this, as well, to your question.
Yeah.
So we currently have a requirement with that dam too, to always have water going over the top. And that's because of the aesthetics of the dam. So we actually, in the summer, when the river is low, don't run the hydro because we have to have enough flow going over the top.
I was not aware.
So some of the ownership
I was not aware of
requirements
that.
of it, and why you can only dewater it briefly, but when you dewater it, it will, there's a lot of places now that you can walk across the river. So
Right.
if you're dewatering.
It's interesting. Right now, there's been a lot of regulations lifted in terms of the river and environmental regulations for fixing the damage that has been done. And hopefully that'll stick around a little bit and help you folks out when you fix the dam.
We certainly intend to be good stewards. The reality is this is Vermont. Dams are let's just say a subject of some debate, especially amongst the environmental community. Again, that being said, we have water rights, we own the dam, we have a certificate of public good to produce the power, and we just intend to do this the right way.
And there's been no pressure from the state or anyone to make the dam go away then. So that's good.
Rocket?
Hi, couple questions. So am I deducing correctly that the spillway, were you to open that now, would be insufficient in terms of the flow that it would let through?
That's our hunch, yes.
Okay, and it's not worth trying.
Right.
Okay, and then downstream, I know that Vin's has closed their trails, and that behind the chamber, the hikes down to Quechee Gorge have also been put on pause for safety concerns. Do you have an opinion about that? I mean, is the report you're giving us that the dam is in good condition give us the confidence to?
If you want my opinion on it, the dam is in no danger of imminent failure. And moreover, if all that water suddenly went down the dam, it would be a drop in the bucket compared to what we saw last Monday. Last Monday, we had feet of water. You know, if the normal height of the flow is this carpet, right? The water was above your head, right, over that dam, which is something I've not seen since Irene. And it was almost as high as Irene. That's an incredibly different circumstance than what we typically see. I really don't feel that the dam itself is a danger to anything downstream. And that's resulted in the feds characterizing it as low hazard because they don't have a no hazard dam. I would say, if anything, you don't know what's under your bridge. It could be concrete from the dam. It could be all the things that came over and hit the top of the dam and you know, perhaps are lodged there. To me, you know, that's together with the banking on the far side of the bridge, a more significant public safety.
Right. So would it be your opinion then that you would recommend the reopening of all these facilities, these public VINs trails and just the VINs trails and
I
the
don't think
hike down
Sound
to
Dam poses any hazard to
Yeah.
the
Okay.
Yeah, we were surprised to hear that doors were getting knocked on and people were being told to prepare an evacuation plan. I think the other thing, and maybe Tim will be the person that can address this better, is the volume of water behind that dam is not a large, it's a dam that was built for hydro purposes, not for flood control purposes. So if you drive through along the Quechee golf course, that water is pretty shallow. That's all you can empty out is the depth of that. So, you know, whether, you know, if the dam failed, my perspective is it would not create a flash flood. Maybe an engineer can provide more of that.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming in. It's been really informative. I think it helps us understand what's going on. Laney, another?
Yeah, follow on with what Rocket said, though. I mean, we want to get the word out that we can reopen our trail system and we can pass along that it's safe for VINs to reopen. I mean, from a town perspective.
Kim?
And maybe Colin's thoughts too. My initial thought is, for whoever made the determination from the town, probably Chief Cooney and or Fire Marshal or whatever, like that. I think it's up to, I would take their recommendation before I would vote to lift any restrictions. I think that, and I don't know if Mr. Shaw wants to give an update about the embankment on the bridge, but I think the only concern I'm hearing right now is just still keeping the bridge closed because of the embankment by the bridge.
I would address another safety concern which John mentioned, which is think of that unfortunate accident that happened in Hanover last year with someone jumping off the bridge and there was stones under the water.
Yeah.
Is my concern when I see the kids there is you don't know what's underneath the water. And I think there's a concern right about the embankment that you'll hear about, but I think there's also, there is concern of, and you have concern and risk everywhere, wherever anyone swims unattended, but that's something, until people know what's there, that's just something that as a parent and as a person, I hate to have something happen.
You're talking about swimming and maybe particularly the rope swing under the bridge and that.
Yeah, until you know what's there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I appreciated coming back from vacation and all the wonderful work my peers did. And when I asked for an update at our stand-up meeting on Monday, definitely it was the bridge and the bank instability that was still of concern. Many things were no longer of concern, but I'm happy to check back in with Chief Cooney and our fire marshal and
This update was helpful, though, you know.
Absolutely.
Scott in at some point.
Yep.
Tom LTA and talk about that. You know, it sounds like the dam is doing fine. Our concerns are more like the bridge, probably, right? And the embankment. So, you know. We'll just
Right.
cover that
Yeah. I wouldn't ask for an update on that because they were pretty clear that as you shared remains a concern. But as far as trails down the way at VINs and such, I'll be happy to follow up on something like that.
And just on that note, I would suggest that we don't need to be involved in the process further regarding the trails, right? So long as that's a determination between our staff and those organizations.
Good. Lanny?
Yeah, well, with that said, though, the select board is ultimately responsible for everything in the town. So I just like to know what the basis for the decision was made on. How was the decision made on? What data or what set of facts was the decision made to close the trails? And if it's going to be still closed, why are we still having, what data is used to make that assessment?
I think we can find that out. I caution against too much Monday morning quarterbacking during an event that people thought could have been worse than Irene. So that decision was made, and certainly if it's no longer an issue, I'm sure we can have them open them back up. If you want to quickly just chime in or any thoughts to add.
Basically corroborate everything that Jay and John just told you. I do have a little bit of background in dam engineering.
Tim, can you just state your name?
Oh, Tim Shaw, resident, also a licensed professional engineer. As Jay mentioned, I've worked with them. I've looked at the building twice now, unfortunately. In passing, I put eyes on the dam, spoken with them. Like I said, I'm comfortable with everything that Jay and John have just told you. If you'd like any more information, I'm glad to elaborate. If you have questions about the bridge, I am the one you can point fingers at and say, he's the guy that closed the bridge. But when the temporary repairs are done, and I want to make sure that that's clear, because I've heard that there's been some misunderstanding about the intent of what's happening out there next. Those are temporary repairs. They are not a permanent fix. Okay. There should be another step coming up, which figures out what needs to be done to do a permanent repair. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's great. We appreciate it. And we'll get Tom and Scott and folks back at an upcoming meeting and just see where everything is. So thanks very much. Thanks everyone for coming in. It was very informative. All right, our next item is the Wilder Community Center. So there is a memo from Gail about the opportunity that was presented to us to sell the Wilder Community Center. And so we asked Gail to do a little bit of follow-up, talk to the leadership team and Bugby Senior Center to see if there was any use they had identified for it. And then also to talk about the sales price. And as you can see, leadership team wasn't able to identify an immediate or near future use of the center sufficient to warrant acquiring a bond. And then you also saw the Bugby Center. They are not interested in the property. They don't think it would add anything more than what they get out of the current Bugby Center. And then you also saw the asking price, the purchase price of the property that the owner provided to us. So I think our question is, do we want to explore other activities that would warrant us acquiring a bond, or just to notify the property owner that at this time we're going to pass on the opportunity to purchase this property? So I'll just let anyone chime in. Laney?
Yeah, I'm going to harken back to what I said before, is that this town needs to start to look towards the future. I'm the last one to advocate for more government, but we're going to have to look at the future of having more offices, more opportunities to grow our departments within our town. We can, at some point, we're no longer going to be able to sustain ourselves in this building. And whether we move to Wilder or some other village, we don't want to just simply pass up on an opportunity that comes before us. So,
Kim, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are that it's a beautiful building. It's an incredible opportunity. I think we just don't have a direct need identified at this time. And so it might be an opportunity that we miss, but I'm also reluctant to just have a giant capital expense presented and then bumped to the top of the list when we're going to need to be asking the voters to bond for other things coming up that have been in the pipeline for a very long time. So it really is painful to miss an opportunity, and really appreciate that Mr. Clem came to us with this offer first, but I can't see that we're in a position to capitalize on it.
Anyone else have thoughts? I think I agree with Kim. I mean, we asked, Yale asked the departmental leadership, and they couldn't come up with any use for it. The Bugby Center declined, and it's just, I sort of agree, like, without knowing what we'd use it for, I just, I don't really see the wisdom in trying to purchase it. Kim?
Sorry to interrupt, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to add to that, it's one thing if, that is probably a favorable price for that building, but it is, if the town wants to purchase more real estate at any time, granted it's a tight market, we can go, spend money to purchase more property if needed. If this were something that this gentleman was going to endow it to the town and donate the property, and we were going to take on some additional expenses, but not $1.5 million, would be a completely different story.
Good, Rocket?
I agree with Ken.
So it seems like the consensus at this point is that we're not really interested in this time, and that we should notify the owner that we're not interested in moving forward in this time. Okay, our next item is the town website update. We have Dylan here.
Yep, so we, over the past few weeks, have been migrating the website on the sort of behind the scenes. Right now, we're in this window of once the vendor started the migration, there was about a 2 to 3 week period where they were not going to be touching the things that were going live while they were doing the majority of the migration. And so myself and my coworker have been sort of trying to play catch up, if that makes sense, to make sure that once we go live, we're as up to date as possible. We've made some final tweaks to the design that I showed last time that we're very happy with, and as well as other folks who have seen it. Currently, the first week in August is slated for some training. We're asking other departments to have 2 folks attend the training, so we have some redundancy between departments. And as I stated before, there are some folks who have some previous experience, which I think is great, and we're going to try and stagger it so the folks who need the basic edits can stay for the beginning part, and then folks who are interested in some more advanced edits can kind of stay for the second half. And then currently we're slated to go live the second week in August. Once we have that date sort of set in stone, I'm happy to share that. It's still sort of up in the air in the moment, but that second week in August is sort of the week that we have picked. And so our goal from the IT perspective is to, like I said, put the right infrastructure in place, make sure we're as up to date as possible, make sure things are easily accessible, and make sure everyone can find what they're looking for. And then at that point, hopefully when the rest of the departments feel comfortable, sort of hand the keys over in some aspects, so that sort of take sort of a behind the scenes role, be there as needed, of course. But then hopefully, as I said, our goal has been to have the right infrastructure in place. And so once we, have that, we can obviously, as other departments speak more about communication goals and the way they want to present the information, we have the right system in place in order to accomplish that. So that is sort of the update for now, but happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Dylan? Kim?
I'm very much looking forward to this. I have a couple questions. One is, when we did the last migration, some of the older, like archived documents didn't make it over. Do you know if there will be that kind of issue going back? Like, how far back will we be able to research old documents, agendas and things?
So the good news with that is because we were still technically not fully migrated away from a documentation standpoint, what they have done just because, as you know, we have, I think the website went live in 2013, so we have literally 10 years worth of stuff to try and sift through. So the website that we migrated from is the one that is they're archiving. So that process of being able to search that is something that I'm trying to figure out. But the good news is that we have access to it. So if folks have a hunch, again, as I figure out the process, but from an availability standpoint, at the very least, we have access to search for it on the back end. And then, as I said, trying to figure out a way of not putting all of that stuff out, because, I think that may be a organizational issue, just too many things to sift through. But I was happy that they were able to keep all of that. So at least we didn't lose it as we move back to, the current vendor.
And that's Civic Plus.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know if there is a way, so we're now starting to get more like agendas that are searchable, scanned in a searchable format. What is it?
OCR?
OCR.
Yep.
Is there any way to do that process on previous archive documents, or can we, in the new site, can we have all the documents searchable?
I can certainly look into that. It may, whether or not that's a manual or a sort of automatic process, I'd have to ask, but I'm sure there's a way to do that.
Honestly, I'd be willing to organize a volunteer task force if it has to be done manually, because it is, we're constantly researching things, and I find it's extremely frustrating to know that those documents are there and not be able to find them.
One of the things we're talking about with training too is obviously I'm encouraging folks who are coming to the training to come with their own questions. But I also have sort of some questions and hopes as well, just based on the previous training, which did not go as well as I would have hoped. And so from the, not Civic Plus, but from the other vendor. And so OCR is something I can definitely bring up to see if there's a streamlined process.
Okay, I have two more quick. So one more is there, I'm guessing that sort of the staff training will be a little bit of a beta test, but is there any opportunity for review by either organization or individual with user experience knowledge, to really look at it as a UX perspective?
In terms of the design?
Yeah.
I would have to have other folks weigh in. Personally speaking, I don't have any problem with that, but I wouldn't want to say definitively without getting everyone's input. But like I said, my whole goal from the very beginning is kind of to do what we attempted to do last time and fully migrated something that we're happy with, but at the same time it's it's malleable. And so if we want to evolve it over time or have multiple folks weigh in on design, that's certainly possible, but I would want other town folks to weigh in on that.
Okay, well, it'll be, I guess once we see it, but I think that we lost so much trust in the last launch where end user experience, I think, was a big factor in that. That and even just in terms of the organization of how the pieces are. Anyway, I would also appreciate it if there were a little beta test that even the select board could see it before it gets fully launched, if that's reasonable. And I thought I had one more question, but I can't think of it now, so I'll leave it there. But thank you for all the work it's taken. I guess another question would be, did this end up costing us as much twice? Did we basically, I know what the other question I had was, sorry. I know that Civic Plus has one of the modules for the ticketing system that we've talked about a number of times. Do you know if that's something that you're looking at incorporating into our current?
For strictly website related requests or something more?
I don't know. I just saw some advertisement for Civic Plus that was a module that was an option in terms of citizen responses. And I still, that's been on our list for a long time in terms of just even a policy or a procedure And if there's an app that can help us with it, that's part of the website.
I'm sure there is. They seem to be coming out with more and more products every day. And so again, to my overall goal of being in the right ecosystem, I think if that's sort of something that everybody would like us to look into, now that we're back with them for the website, that should be a fairly easy thing to look into.
I mean, yeah, it may not be the end choice, but definitely look to explore it. Oh, yeah, so then, and did it cost us just as much as the last one did? Like, did we basically pay for a new website twice?
No, it would have been, there was some additional cost for sure. But I think we were in sort of the right time frame, like I mentioned, we weren't fully retired from the old website, so they were able to, since we were still a current customer, it was a bit easier from a financial and a strategic standpoint. So.
Great.
So anyone have any other questions for Dylan? All
I'll
right,
just
thanks,
say,
Dylan.
I just want to say thank you, Dylan. And as far as that cost, a lot of those savings were due to Dylan's negotiating tactics. So
Great,
appreciate
thanks, Dylan.
that.
Thanks, Dylan.
Very nice.
There's a Canva.
Okay.
Mike, go ahead and unmute if you can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Thank you for recognizing me. A quick question about the website. Is there a possibility to have something set up on the website this past storm? I was hearing through public media warnings about the storm and the potential damage and road closures, but I couldn't find it on the website. Is there a better way to put it right up front on the website when we have something or emergency or urgent to put out to the public? I just found it sad to hear it through public media, Facebook and people's Hartford listserv postings, as opposed to going to our website and finding officially what the announcements were.
Right, yeah. I mean,
To make it easy for the public.
Yeah, the website did have a link on the front. It wasn't huge, and certainly could have missed it. I don't know if.
Well,
It was very small and at the top of the screen.
yeah, several people I spoke to had the same problem not finding it. That's all, and it didn't stand out to me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, certainly, I can't imagine, Dylan, it's a hard lift to sort of when we have an emergency like that and we want to have a link for people to have it really prominently featured.
That's
on
what,
the webpage.
that was sort of one of my issues with our current vendor as well. Civic Plus has a much bigger banner. You can have two banners as well. And they do a lot of stuff with emergency notifications and cross postings to social media and things of that nature. So I think, again, not to repeat myself, but going back to being in the correct ecosystem, as we have our own internal meetings about how the emergency operations center went, I think it's only going to kind of get better over time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take 5 and then come back. So we're going to break for 5. All right, we're back from our break. Our next item is an update on our human resources software. So I will turn that over to Paula.
I believe
What's your
that's
update?
me. Okay. Dylan and I are continuing to have conversations with Namely. We have kicked those up again. Payments are on hold except for startup fees. So realizing still that implementation of the system is going to require universal buy-in across all staff. And so the thinking has come up that it might be that universality might best be reached when we have a new town manager in place, and there's that direction in it. Implementing this also requires a designated HR person, which I currently am not. Other things going on. But what we are doing, because progress does continue, and again, this is working with Dylan and Will, we're utilizing the Adobe capabilities that we have for our document management and also for security. So less paper, less employee personal information going across just via email and such. We're maximizing our relationships with our benefit providers, and we also have a healthcare consultant who we work with quite closely, continuing to provide good customer service to staff. And additionally, I retooled the townwide application. So it includes collection of EEO data, which it hadn't done in the past. And if if Namely is not updated and we can't hit a button to get the information, if we do meet the threshold to require federal reporting of EEO data, it can be done manually with current staff. So not a lot since I last spoke. Not a lot on Namely, I should say, since I last spoke, but definite progress on documentation, on our applications, items such as that.
Questions for Paula? All right, thanks, Paula.
You're
Much
welcome.
appreciated. Our last item is the timeline for open board items. So this is an opportunity for the board to discuss what we need to do in the next few months, what we want to do, things like that. So this is an opportunity for people to sort of throw stuff out there. I mean, there's stuff we need to get done, like the charter. So I think that's on there. We need to interview and hire a town manager. So that's on there. And then, Paul?
Can I ask a question? Because I'm going to keep track of all these. Can I just sort of assume that what comes up and what is talked about are things that you all do want to put on the list instead of doing the whole?
Well, I think so. It's going to come down to sort of, capacity and time and things like that, and we're probably going to need to sort of prioritize some things over others. Certainly the charter, we need to get that done, and we need to think about when we have to get it done. So I think it has to go to the select board, the school board, and then on the ballot. Right?
So I'll put everything on the list, and then there'll be, okay.
So the charter, I'll throw that one out there. That's something we need to think about. It came into us, I think, in pretty good shape. We may not have a ton of revisions, but we do have some discussions about parts of it, particularly possibly pulling out one or two provisions to present to the voters separately. So the charter is going to have to be something on our agenda, and I'd like to, we can start looking at that over the next month or two. I think that would be helpful just to get it off our plates, particularly when we go into the budget season. So, I mean, I'm open to, we've heard Ally isn't here tonight, but she mentioned quite a number of things, the policy on policies, communications officer, all kinds of stuff. So if people want to just, put out what they think we need to tackle, that would be helpful.
Can I just read Ally's?
Yes, absolutely.
List?
Yep.
And then, and Paul, I think you were on this email too. So, but her notes. She said she's unable to attend, sending some items, 5G, this item on the agenda, hope to be included in the conversation. I really recognize that some of these may hinge on the timing of hiring and onboarding a permanent town manager. So her list is capital improvement projects policy or guidance memo. Sounds like this will definitely be forthcoming, she wrote. Which I can hear, is there anyone that does not want to just discuss how we prioritize capital improvement plan?
My understanding was Gail was going to get us something, right, at some point. I mean, maybe later in August, you know, we have our budget guidance we got to do at some point. It sounded like that was forthcoming.
Just what I guess, and then solidifying a select board calendar to make the timing for the budget cycle, committee updates, joint school board and select board meetings, and select board trainings consistent each year. And I would like to add to that listening sessions, which I've tossed around a draft budget calendar that does include listening sessions, ideally in each of the libraries in the 4 villages that are not White River, but since we have town hall in the village of White River Junction, I think it would be interesting to explore. I don't know if all the libraries could actually accommodate that kind of thing with the whole board, but something to consider.
We've been there before.
What?
We've been there before.
There where?
We've been to libraries before.
Okay.
The select board has.
All of them, yeah.
All the libraries, yes.
Okay, good. That's great. Then we should be able to have listening sessions there. And timing and process for hiring a public information officer. Policy on policies, making use of the data gathered by Abundant Sun on the organizational culture of the town of Hartford as an employer. I also would I'll chime in also with, are we expecting an update on the assessment of the transfer station? You know of? I can't remember where we're at. I think.
Didn't we put some money towards like an assessment?
Right, yes.
And so, yeah, so I think we're just waiting, right?
Do we even have someone?
Well, that may be the thing. I don't know.
This is the kind of thing that I would do a search for on our website to look at it.
I can't say because I'm not at every meeting, but I thought it was on there. I thought you had it.
I think it's in process.
Did it not have
No,
it?
no, we haven't gotten a recent
Haven't had it.
presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, not since this
Okay.
current.
Yep.
It's been at least a year.
Those are
That's
all
not true. We did have, Chris was in here and talked about the fact that they did line borings at the transfer station. That was at the end of their session. That was in less than 3 months ago. He came and talked about that.
So what are the outcomes?
We haven't heard back yet.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm looking for. I
Okay.
just want some updates on what.
We did get an update, the fact that they completed their line borings and they were going to evaluate the line borings and get back to us. So I would think we could go to them and ask them what what they found out from the line borings.
Right, I think we're still expecting some sort of overview, like there was a solid waste study proposal that was done several years ago. But I think we're looking at something like that. Here we are, this many years later, what are our options?
I don't agree with that. I thought we were just looking, because that entailed also recycling and curbside recycling. And we're not discussing curbside recycling this time. All we're discussing is the future of the landfill.
Yeah, well, and the transfer station as a whole, I think.
But last time it was based on curbside
Okay,
recycling.
I would like, and I would ask the board if they would also like update and proposal for what we're going to do with the transfer station.
Yeah, by itself, not to include curbside recycling.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a separate line item. That's, that's a budget discussion too, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just two separate things because we have already started the study into the landfill itself and what to do with everything. It's an engineering study, right? It's to find out what's there and what can be done with it. And then I believe that piece of information is part of the greater plan for what is going to happen there with everything.
Just want to update on that. That seems perfectly reasonable. And then cemeteries. So that's something we. So that's something we'll want to schedule and discuss. you just give the board maybe like a very brief, like, overview of what you think needs to be done and sort of what questions are before us regarding the cemeteries?
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with the board. I have the.
And just to introduce this to the record.
Okay, my name is Ken Parker.
Yep.
I live in Hartford Village. I had the opportunity to chat with Gail last Thursday. Twice delayed appointment, one of which I had been looking forward to, but unfortunately Hitchcock called. I spent some time there, so I'm glad that she could devote a half hour to me. And I thought it was a very productive time that we spent together. I had basically 8 items on my list of things that I wanted to chat about, and I'm going to just throw them out here tonight because I think they're germane to your request that I make an appearance. Status of the Hartford Cemetery, for one thing. We have the road repair in the middle of the cemetery finished. And that has generated the need to do repairs to the roadway from Route 14 up to the middle of the cemetery. The heavy truck traffic took its toll on that part of the road, and I'm in the process of getting some bids to do the work. I do have some funding left in the kitty that might be used for that. The road expense for the middle section of the road was $65,000. The repair for the rest of the road is somewhat south of that, but not by a lot. So that plus some tree work that needs to be done. We'll get some large trees that need to be taken down. They're a safety issue, and we had one calamity last year with an oak tree that was on a bank and it split and fell on a house down on Sargent Street. And we dug into our pockets to help the homeowner recover from that. That's pretty much done. So I'm trying to eliminate some other old trees from a similar fate. We don't want them falling on somebody and getting hurt, whether it's in the cemetery or around the perimeter. We are in the process of talking with a company that does cemetery restoration work, and we will have some of the stones that have been toppled over stood back up by the end of the summer. I think there's about a dozen there that are down on the ground. Mother Nature's not kind to us with the clay conditions that we have there. As a consequence, through the thawing and freezing over years, some of the stones on the hillsides have fallen over. While they may be the responsibility of the families, it's highly unlikely that we can get a family to stand the stones back up. So we need to do that. And I do have some funds set aside for that. That's the first thing that I wanted to accomplish with Gail and also with you. To let you know that we're a work in progress. I think things are moving along. The cemetery looks good. And it's through a lot of thanks to you folks on the board over the years, supporting both the Hartford Cemetery as well as the other cemeteries. I speak most affectionately and advisedly of the Hartford Cemetery because that's the one that I'm most involved with. But I do have my finger on the pulse of some of the other cemeteries, and I would think that you, if you can see a way to do it, should continue your funding as you have in the past. There's much work to be done, and we're in a better situation in some communities, such as Rutland, which has apparently no funding or does very little to maintain cemeteries in the city. There was a piece on CAX a couple of weeks ago, and it's unfortunate that they're letting their cemeteries grow. I'm so thankful that we don't do that here in Hartford. The second thing, and I hate to be reiterative, but I'm somewhat of a broken record when it comes to some things that I've asked be done in the past that still remain undone. And one of the most critical ones is the need for a document storage facility, someplace where we can take the historical records of all the cemeteries and have them stored in an environmentally sound place where they're secure. Some of them are quite fragile. Some of the maps that I know about, both at the Hartford Cemetery as well as some of the other cemeteries, are really in jeopardy where how they're stored and how they're handled. And it would be helpful if we could have both a secure place where the public can go and examine records. State law requires them to be available for the public to research or explore. And that's not the case with us. I mean, all of the 4 cemeteries that the 5th one is St. Anthony's, I can't speak to. But the other 4 of us catch as catch can, and that's not the way it should be. So I implore you to take that task and let's get it done. Hand in glove with that was a promise that was made by the former town manager to digitize the records, and that's not been done. That should be done in conjunction with a secure place. If the records are digitized, then the fragility of them is somewhat reduced. The public can look at the digitized records and do their ancestry research and things of that nature.
Barry?
Where are the records now? Are they here at Town Hall?
No. Some of them are, but very few. Some are in my spare bedroom for the Hartford Cemetery in cardboard boxes. It's not possible for me to let people come in
Yeah,
and do the research.
obviously, I was just wondering. where-
I don't know about Quechee specifically today, but I do know that their records were with the Hudson family. I think they still are. I mentioned back in January when I met with you that I think it was January that the Hudsons had the misfortune of having a fire at their home, and the records were there at the house. Fortunately, there was nothing destroyed, and the fire department responded quickly and put it out. But you could have lost 200 years of cemetery records in a heartbeat. There, or my place, or wherever. Kim?
Lanny, then Kip.
Yeah, Ken, one thing that I always worry about is how close are we to having you walk up and hand us the keys to Hartford Cemetery?
I can't answer that.
The reason I ask the question is that these are things that I very much concern me. I keep saying we need to have a cemetery commissioner in our town.
I'm going to get to that.
All right. The record storage that you speak of, how much area do we need for record storage? Is this something that could fit in a small office, or is it something
I think so. I mean, I have 3 cardboard boxes and several maps. Wouldn't take up much space for our records.
Right. So I understand your records. I mean, and I know, I personally know how much Quechee records are because my mother kept them. So that's not a lot there. But I do think that we should have the records for the town cemeteries in the town municipal building somewhere. And I'd just like to see some area freed up for the ability to have those.
I hope when I'm finished going through my 8 points here, that it will be motivation for the board to start taking steps to do some planning for the eventual ownership of cemeteries. You know, I'm content to do what I'm doing right now. I have your support, which is great. I'm not getting any younger. I don't have anybody behind me that's.
Well, that's the question, is that there's nobody waiting in the wings to take over Hartford Cemetery.
I don't think there's anybody waiting in the wings at the other cemeteries either.
And that's the problem. So
remember, guys, this is a discussion of our priorities going forward. And if we want that to include cemeteries. It's not a discussion of the minutia really of the record storage and stuff. And it seems like some of this stuff is going to come up as part of the budget discussion.
Yep.
Getting you appropriate money, is there money to digitize? Is there money to set aside, for find a place for that? So just try to remember that as we go forward.
Okay, can I just make a couple of extra points?
Sure, yeah, of
points
course.
here? There needs to be a cemetery committee of some form.
Okay.
We have one, and I don't think that there's any interest in some of the members of that board serving on another one because of the inaction. And it's not, you guys happen to be the ones on the hot seat right now, but there were other boards that didn't do anything, and that's discouraging to people. There's a way for the town to have a cemetery commission under the statutes, and that should be explored. I thought that, and I think it's worthy of legal opinion. I thought that cemetery commission could be created as an item under our charter. FX told me that that's not the case. I don't think that's correct, but I'd like to have the town find out legally how to create a cemetery commission that has representatives of the public on the commission.
Okay, so that may be a question during our charter discussion as well. Okay, great.
One thing we've glossed over, and it's becoming obvious to me through some work that we've just done to lay out a new good work to find out how many burial sites we have in the cemetery left. We need to talk about planning for a new cemetery in town. Maybe 20 years from now or so, but that 20 years passes pretty quick. If somebody doesn't take the ball and run with it and start identifying some areas where we might have a new cemetery, we're going to need one, folks. I think maybe 70% of our plots or burial rights are utilized. We have about 140 plots remaining, and at the rate we're going now, that's good for maybe 15 years at the most. We'll be somewhat out of space unless there's a manifest change in the way we lot things out. But right now, we're on the basis of assuming that every burial is going to be a full casket burial, and that's not what's happening.
Can you say that last part again?
Full casket burial.
Oh, full casket.
77% of the burials in Vermont now are cremation remains, not full casket. 14% of full casket. So there's been a real shift in the last 8 or 10 years, and that's helping us conserve space. We're able to put multiple cremation remains in one burial right, but still there needs to be something done, and it's going to be some expense. I'm hoping that maybe somebody might donate a piece of land. That would be ideal for a cemetery, but the arm twisting hasn't been finished yet. So, green burials. We're not anticipating green burials in Hartford Cemetery, in part because of space. But there is a possible solution that is worth the board exploring. There was a story on Channel 9 back in, I think it was March. Londonderry, New Hampshire, I believe is the town, that designated a portion of the town forest as a green burial site. And they sectioned off 54 plots within the town forest for green burial. Green burials are basically ashes to ashes, dust to dust. No embalming, no concrete vaults, people basically being put in a shroud, buried naturally. And that's something that other cemeteries in the area are looking at. And I'm wondering if we could use a portion of our town forest for that sort of thing. So, we're thinking about funding for future cemetery needs. We had a study committee that came up with a projection of the cost that would be necessary to repair and maintain the cemeteries. That study was done in 2018. It's worth taking another look at and recasting the numbers to see what today's numbers would look like. So,
okay, that's great.
The present funding is about half of what it was predicted.
You be able to get us a copy of that, or is
Oh, you've got.
we have somewhere?
Yeah.
Probably in the documents.
Town manager's office has.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Digitization I've spoken about. We need to talk about for the future, when the town gets the keys. Those are my truck keys, but they're symbolic. We need to talk about how we're going to maintain cemeteries in this community.
Okay.
I think there's a case that can be made to set up a department within Public Works to do all the mowing that the town needs to have done, whether it's parks, recreation fields, cemeteries, or whatever. Somebody needs to dedicate the time to look at that from a costing point of view, as well as from the standpoint of getting things taken care of. If it's done by outside contractors, that's one thing, but there may be some personnel uses that the staff that does that in the summer could be put to for the winter time. And finally, we really at this stage could use cemetery management software. And I just happen to know that $20,000 was appropriated last year on the just expired budget for that purpose, and it wasn't spent. Okay. And I believe it's gone to the unallocated fund balance. And I would encourage you to pull it out of there and let's put it to the productive use that it was originally intended for. The town cemetery at Christian Street, our cemetery would benefit from that immensely. And all of the cemeteries would. And eventually, if we can get the database created, it will help the town with its future management of the cemeteries in the community. So that's my story.
Thanks, Ken. That's great.
You've heard it before.
We appreciate it. I think some of these, there is some of that overlap, like with the budget, and it's remembering, like, as we do the budget process to keep the cemeteries in line with these issues. Certainly the charter, the idea of a cemetery commission and the charter is something we could certainly look at, because we have to do both the budget and the charter. Those are like the big things coming up. So I appreciate, and even stuff like money for digitization, like overall, not just cemetery records, but like all the records. Yeah, those are all important issues, and they kind of, there's some synergy coming between it.
There's a legal question that comes up when it involves cemetery being turned over to the town. All of our cemeteries have endowments. You can't use the principal of the endowment. We can only use the interest that's earned on it. The question is, if a cemetery gets turned over to the community, what happens to the endowment? And we're talking a significant amount of money among the cemeteries, with the exception of St. Anthony's. That's owned by the Diocese of Burlington. And you're not going to get your hands on their endowment.
Yeah.
Too busy spending in other ways. I think of the 3 or 4 active cemeteries, I think West Hartford may have the largest endowment of all of us. So
that'd be something probably go for Secretary of State or the.
Well, I suspect that the process is going to involve probate court. I mean, I made a comment earlier about 70% of our soul burial rights are used. The other 30%, we can't get our hands on without going through the process of escheatment. And that takes 37 years from what I understand. 20 years, you've got to look for somebody that's a descendant of the people that purchased the lot. And then after the 20 years passes, if you can't identify anybody that's going to use one of the burial plots, then you go to the probate court and you ask them to approve escheatment. And it takes a 17-year waiting period. I don't think I'm going to be around 37 years from now, so I'm not going to start that process. But, it's cumbersome. There are going to be, and I think our cemetery is not unlike a lot of others, there are plots that we can't sell, and nobody's going to use, and we just got to accept that fact. So,
great. Thanks, Ken.
Well, it's always enlightening to be here.
No.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's very nice talking to you. Lanny?
Yeah, one more thing for board items that we need to address.
What's that? Air conditioning?
I think so. Are you hot?
The other item we need to address.
Lanny's got a comment.
Sorry, oh, no, you don't. I thought we were in between things.
Oh, Lanny?
Are we ready now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to revisit our select board rules of procedure.
Yes.
Yeah, and I, as I told Lanny the other day, VLC suggested that at a reorganization meeting is the best time to do that. It's not that we can't plan for it in advance, but actually discussion and, you know, come.
Well, if we're not going to readdress our rules of procedure, we should at least follow what we have in place.
You make sure, you're keeping track of this list, so did you get that? The rules of procedure.
So rules of procedure, code of conduct, which would be great. And so, yeah, those are things, the timeline's a little farther out.
Yeah.
You know, but we're looking at going into the, yes, Ken?
Bring on my
Oh,
hat as
yeah.
a former select. Do you have a conflict of interest
Yes.
policy?
Yes.
We do. Yep. So those seem like a little farther out. If we're looking from now until we really get into the budget stuff, like in the fall.
Oops, sorry, can I just clarify something about that timing? So I guess what I'm confused about is a new sitting board supposed to try to develop those? I mean, the rules and procedures that we have, I guess a new sitting board could look at updating them or reviewing them. But if there was some
That was my
modifications.
question too.
But like a code of conduct, that's a new document, and that would be something that we think should be pushed to a new board. I think it could be something that could be developed by this board, particularly with a permanent town manager.
I mean, I think it's
That then
waiting.
it could be decided if the new sitting board.
I
wanted
think
to-
it's waiting. I mean, look, the most important things coming up are the new town manager budget. You know, I mean, that has to be our priority before anything else.
Our priority is to make sure we come back from this storm damage. That's our number one priority.
So our priority as a board, looking forward for items that we have to do are the budget, the town manager, and the charter. We need to get all those done.
Right.
So those are sort of the big ones, you know, and Ken's brought up a lot of good points of things to think about, you know, with cemeteries, we can think about that with part of the budget and stuff. I think for like a code of conduct, if we want to actually like adopt one, you know, we wait till the new town manager's here, you know. I mean, it's, and then, you know, we see what it looks like and see if we want to actually adopt it.
Right, yeah.
I
I could be reinventing the wheel,
Yeah.
like, or inventing the wheel, whatever the case.
Yeah, I agree. And I think actually when I spoke with the LCT, it was with the caveat that, you know, you're actually working on it, but that you're adopting it at reorganization.
Oh, okay.
Not that you're not going to do it until then. It's that this is the time to say, okay, this is how we're going to move forward from here on out.
As part of the organizational
Yeah.
meeting after the election.
Yeah.
I guess
Kim and Rocket.
just add to our list, like Ali mentioned the policy on policies, but I think that also part of those, that request that the board did say we supported was like the policy accessibility and storage and organization of policies. Right, so like right now, if you look on the town website for the noise ordinance or the policy on whatever, you know, like things are hard to find because they're not,
Right.
there's not a storage system, there's not an organization to where they are located. And that might also be something incorporated with the new website, which is what we were waiting for before. You know, basically H4A was told, well, when the new website comes live, then we can establish where everything is and what needs to be located. Like basically in the very successful interviews we had with potential, you know, with town manager candidates, I think every single one that we had on Monday mentioned that they looked for stuff on our town website and couldn't find it. I know that's a broken record, but our town policies are a big part of that, I think. So, so policy on policies, including storage and organization.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this list. Kim had emailed us a few months ago about PCHEX, Treasury PCHEX credit facility. There was a first round that ended in June, but I believe there'll be future rounds of that. And I just want to make sure we keep that on our radar. That is the program, for anyone wondering, is called 10% for Vermont. And it's basically 10% of the daily cash balance of the state treasury. I think that's my understanding. And that can be loaned out, primarily giving priority to nonprofits and to municipalities. They have priority for initiatives around climate resiliency, but also housing. And they are by legislation empowered to give low interest loans. This is lower than we would be able to get if we were to bond through a bank or something like that. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity for us to explore. And it could potentially amount to a multi-million-dollar investment in our community, whether we did that exclusively ourselves as the municipality as the lead, or if we found a way to do a public-private partnership where we found developers, or, you know, say if there was a parking garage or some sort of infrastructural project or something, we could go 50-50 or do something creative. I think there's just a lot of opportunities with that facility in general. I think I've been sort of like checking in. I haven't seen any updates lately. I think they're extremely focused on flood recovery. But I think that that's something that I want to keep put on our radar, especially as we go into budgeting and capital CIP, capital improvement projects. Just because I think that there might be some great opportunities for us in that. And so that as one, and then anything similar to that we might find, whether it's the Northern Borders Regional Commission or otherwise through the state or however else, I think there's some really great opportunities for us, including the Inflation Reduction Act. There's been a lot of money for climate resiliency. And I know our departments are actively always looking for grants as well. So just something that I want to keep on our radar.
Rocket, what was the name of that specific program? I heard you say 10% for Vermont, but
That's what it's called.
Oh, that's what it's called.
Yeah, so if you look up Vermont State Treasurer, 10% for Vermont.
Got it.
Well, we've thrown some stuff out there, things to keep in mind, things we are committed to do and have to do. So we'll just keep all this sort of on our list of things. And it may be, you know, as we take up certain items, there's like you know, sort of a natural affinity for some of the things that we've talked about, particularly when it comes to the budget, I think. So we'll just keep on doing what we're doing. Okay, commission reports. Kim?
Town Manager Search Committee has been working very well together under the leadership of Gabrielle Luke and Joe Major as chair and vice chair, and with Donna Cloud of the LCT and St. Albans. First round of candidate interviews was held on Monday, July 24th, and the next sessions are scheduled for July 27th, which is Thursday. The committee hopes to forward promising candidates to the select board by Monday, July 31st, and to schedule finalist interviews with the board during the week of either August 7th or 14th, depending on availability.
Okay.
Yep, good, thanks. Can we ask a question of Kim? How many candidates applied for the position?
I was told around 50.
And how many moved forward to interviews?
We had moved forward 9, 1 dropped out, 8, and then the 8 dropped out. So we have 7 scheduled to interview. Or we interviewed 5, we have 2 more to go.
And did the committee whittle that down to that number, or did Dominic Cloud whittle that down?
It was a collaboration. Basically, there were a number set forth that were, you know, recommended to move forward, that were, you know, kind of what considered like maybes for us to consider, and ones that he did not recommend. And we went through, as a committee in executive session, we went through all of the resumes.
Good. Yeah.
Pretty good consensus going.
Mary?
Yeah, Hartford Conservation Commission met on July 17th after several changes because of the weather and the flooding. There is one vacancy on the commission as a result of the recent resignation of John Boughton, for whom we are appreciative of his dedication and service for about 15 years. Thank you, John, and best wishes. There were several guests at the last meeting, including Suzanne Enser, who filled in for Jennifer Byrne, who was set to attend. Suzanne, who represents the Quechee district, is a member of the Natural Resources Conservation District and spoke to the upcoming survey. Of course, many of you already know the foot race that was to be held at Hurricane Forest was canceled due to the very wet conditions that would have aggravated the trail system and is rescheduled to the end of August. Other items of interest were on pollinators, invasive plants, snowmobile bridge repairs, and books. Our Better Nature is one book, and Nature's Best Hope, which are at town libraries and some school libraries like Dothan Brook. And the recycling done at the Community Coalition Block Party was much more successful than previous times. And with a little bit of tweaking, will guide people more easily next time toward trash or compostables. And our next meeting is not until August 28th at 7 p.m.
Hey, Rocket, anything?
No.
Lanny, anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay, I don't have anything. Consent agenda?
Wait, you were at H4?
I don't have anything to report. I didn't take notes.
All right, let's do the consent agenda. Dan?
Sure.
All right, let's do.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the payroll ending 7/22/2023.
Oh, wait, there's a hand up.
For what?
I guess it's maybe town manager search. It's Michelle.
Okay.
Sorry, Dan. Michelle, go ahead. Oh, wait.
Hi, yeah, hi, Michelle from White River. I had my hand up for a bit.
Sorry.
Actually, I had a question about, you were talking about the document you had for Select Board Rules and Procedure. And I'm wondering what mechanism you have in place to monitor whether or not the board is adhering to the rules and procedures. I know when I was on the school board, we had monitoring reports and went over those things and actually talked about them in a meeting and talked about what we needed to do to improve, you know, if there were things that weren't working. So what kind of mechanism do you have to see if you are adhering to the rules and procedures that that were created? I think it was a few years back I found it. And why wait until a new town manager? I don't understand why you would have to wait for a new town manager, because that's already in place. And you guys can pretty much self-assess the job you're doing without the town manager, because the town manager really job isn't to assess what the select board is doing. It's your job to assess how you are doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. We don't have a formal mechanism for observing our adherence to the policies, but that may be something we'd like to discuss as we take up the broader issue. All right, consent agenda.
Okay, so I'd like to approve the payroll ending 7/22/2023, approve meeting minutes of 7/11/2023 and 7/18/2023, approve the AP manifest of 7/21 and 7/27/2023. Select board meeting already approved of 8/8 and 8/22.
I'll second.
Second, Kim, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will take the meeting to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
And we have a second from Rocket. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.
It's so funny.
This would trip down the lumber.